Hey guys, what is up, and I welcome each and every one of you to a new League of Legends video. So today we'll be taking a look at the biggest changes coming in the next patch, patch 8.11. This is probably going to be the biggest patch this season so far of League of Legends. So as usual, if you guys end up enjoying this video, then don't forget to hit that like button, but let's just get right into it. So the first thing to talk about is of course going to be the release of the newest champion coming to League of Legends, Pyke. As I'm sure most of you already know, Pyke is essentially a support melee assassin who is an AD champion. Now there is potential to play him, for instance, maybe in the mid lane or maybe even top lane. However, his passive does not let him get actual bonus HP from items because instead it converts it to AD. But to make up for that, he does have a lot of base HP and HP per level, so even by level 18 you'll still have around 2.5k HP. He is a fairly difficult champion to play overall and be successful with, and whether or not he'll be OP in the current meta when he finally comes out is still up in the air, because currently making him work in team comps I feel like is going to be a little bit awkward. But if the meta ever suits him, or if you actually find a way to make him work quite well, I do think this champion has a lot of potential, because his ultimate without question is easily the most broken thing in his entire kit. That thing is disgustingly OP. So I do expect a low win rate on this champion when he first initially comes out, but as people start to learn him and the meta maybe starts to suit him better, I think his win rate will definitely be quite good. But moving along, we also have another massive change coming this patch, which of course is going to be the rework to the ADC class as a whole. I have mentioned this change in previous videos a few times already, so I'll just quickly go over it once again. Almost every AD carry is having their base AD lowered, the AD per level will be increased, the armor will be lowered, the HP will be increased, the HP per level will be increased, but the HP regeneration will be lowered. In other words, to actually have presence in the map, you have to destroy your lane and actually do quite well, rather than just kind of barely win, and then just because you're an AD carry, you're already probably the most important person on your team. Following this, there are also obviously a lot of changes coming over to the items. For instance, one of the newer ones is actually Brawler's Glove. Now, the critical strike chance on this is a unique passive, and also it now costs you 600 gold rather than just 400 gold, which is insane. That honestly is a massive nerf. But don't forget, in general, critical strike items and just critical strike build paths are being nerfed as a whole. For instance, Zeal, the total cost has been increased by 100, and the critical strike chance offered by this item is now only 15% rather than 20%, and of course, Rapid Fire Cannon, Static Shriv, and Runan's Hurricane have all had their costs increased by 300 gold, while Phantom Dancer has only had the cost increased by 200 gold, but regardless, a pretty big nerf across the board for critical strike items. And of course, it doesn't stop there just yet, because Infinity Edge did receive that mini rework where now it no longer grants you critical strike damage and no longer gives you plus 20% critical strike chance. Instead, now it essentially has Yasuo's passive that doubles your crit chance, and 15% of all your critical strike damage dealt to champions is converted to true damage. In other words, when you're going critical strike items and also topping it off with an Infinity Edge, you'll be a lot stronger against tanks and just frontline kind of bruisery champions in general. But when it comes to hitting maybe assassins, enemy AD carries, or even mages, you won't be doing as much damage as you currently are on the live servers. So a nerf to squish your champions, a buff against tankier champions. And then of course we also have the rework coming over to Essence Reaver, which no longer works with critical strike chance in general anymore. Instead, now what it offers you is 300 mana. It has a changed effect that now has mana refunded based on 1% of your missing mana on hit, and it has a new effect that's a unique passive that states, after you cast your ultimate, your next basic attack within 10 seconds grants you Essence Flare for 8 seconds with a 30-second cooldown, and Essence Flare gives you the following bonus: gain 30% attack speed, and basic attacks refund 20% of your remaining non-ultimate cooldowns. In other words, they're making Essence Reaver much more of sort of a niche item, because not every single champion is going to want to have this item because they can't make use of this item, but champions like maybe Lucian, maybe Kai'Sa, and even other champions like maybe Master Yi, maybe even Jax can make full use of this item, and in fact actually make it seem pretty OP. So this one is the one I'm most worried about. I'm really hoping Riot didn't make a big mistake with Essence Reaver, because I think this item can actually make certain champions pretty damn disgustingly overpowered. And very quickly, we also have the changes to the Last Whisper item and set as a whole. Now it penetrates through total armor rather than percent bonus armor. So now for the Last Whisper itself, it's 10% total versus 35% bonus. Lord Dominic's Regard is now 35% total armor, and then you have Mortal Reminder, which now is 25% total armor, but of course it still gives you the Grievous Wounds debuff. And some minor changes to other items like Blade of the Rune King, the Bloodthirster, are both costing you now 200 gold less. Maw of Malmortius is just overall a better item for champions that actually don't have MR to begin with and gives them a bit more MR overall, and a slight buff coming over to Guardian's Angel as well. And then of course we also have the new item Stormrazor for 3200 gold, 70 AD, 30% attack speed that gives you the following buff, where if you have an attack for 3 seconds, your next basic attack will critically strike for 160% bonus damage, which scales up per 1.5% critical strike chance, maximum being 200%, and give you a little bit of movement speed. Also somewhat of a questionable item to where, yeah, it can work on ADs, but I'm thinking more of assassins like Zed, Talon, and even some top lane bruisers that can make real good use of this item for sure. And the last thing I quickly want to mention regarding this whole ADC rework update is of course the new keystone Hail of Blades. Essentially it is the opposite effect of what current lethal tempo does. Because for lethal tempo, after you go in combat, after a couple of seconds you finally get this massive attack speed burst, but instead Hail of Blades is you instantly get a massive attack speed burst for the first 3 attacks to kind of start off the fight in your favor. This one is definitely going to be an interesting one, and I'm very curious to see which champions will just simply excel at using this specific keystone, so not entirely sure at the very moment, but it's going to be very cool to find out. Also very quickly, I'm sure most of you have heard about the 2 new fighter items coming to the PvE server and of course the live servers, the Spear of the Trojan and also the Atma's Reckoning. Now I wanted to very quickly mention the fact that these items are not coming out in the next patch. They're actually expected to hit the live servers in patch 8.12, so in just over 2 weeks. So don't expect these items on top of the ADC rework and on top of the new champion to all be cram packed into one patch. But now let's talk about some buffs and nerfs coming over to the champions, first of which being Anivia. Now Anivia is getting an overall buff, and it's going to be specific towards her Q ability where the cooldown has been lowered and also the AP ratio has been increased by 5%. Now, not the biggest buff in the world, but at rank 1, the Q is 2 seconds lower in cooldown, which actually isn't all that bad since usually you max your E ability first on Anivia anyways. Following this, we also have a quick nerf coming over to Graves, where his base AD has been lowered from 69 to 66, and his ultimate, Collateral Damage, the cooldown has been increased as well. Now the cooldown increase on his ultimate really isn't that high, nor is the base AD being lowered that significant, but don't forget, the base AD being lowered also does affect the overall damage all of his abilities do as well, since of course they do scale off of AD. Next up, we have a mini rework coming over to Kha'Zix, and it's going to be towards his ultimate, because currently the ultimate that makes him go invisible whenever he goes into any bush is disgustingly overpowered. No longer will it do that. In fact, it's now going to be doing what it did before the current ultimate on the live servers, where he can just stealth an extra time and a bit longer. This is still going to be enough to consistently re-proc the Duskblade with every single stealth of his ultimate, which is going to be extremely important, but only once you upgrade the ultimate. All in all, this is definitely a nerf to Kha'Zix. I mean, I still think this ultimate will be pretty damn strong because a 2-second invisibility 3 times in a row is still very, very powerful, but at least it's not going to be as disgustingly broken as the current one. Next up, we have some changes coming over to Master Yi, where the base AD has been lowered by 2, but his attack speed has been increased by a decent amount. I guess the purpose of this is to make his early to mid game a little bit less impactful, but if he gets to the part where he just has maybe 4 items and it's fairly late into the game, he'll be really unstoppable, which I don't know if it's a good thing, but I guess it's okay. Then we have a quick nerf coming over to Rakan, because Rakan has definitely seen quite a lot of spotlight recently. So it's going to be first towards his Q ability, where the heal has just overall been lowered, and his Battle Dance E ability, the shield strength has just overall been lowered as well at every single rank. Overall, I still think Rakan will be an average champion, you know, not the best support in the entire world, but definitely not the worst, but he definitely needed some nerfs because this guy was quite strong. Next up, we have a mini rework coming over to Talia, and this is definitely going to change the way she's just being played. So her base HP and her base movement speed have both been increased, and her passive is just not only faster, but you can get back onto the rock much quicker. But her Q ability is where the massive changes start to hit. No longer will Talia gain bonus movement speed on worked ground, her Q ability no longer just deals AoE damage, which is the biggest parts, and casting her Q ability on worked ground no longer refunds its mana cost. However, minions no longer take reduced damage from additional rocks, and also, whenever she uses her Q ability on worked ground, it now has a 1 mana cost. It feels like Riot is kind of moving her from being a roamer kind of champion to just push and roam, to being, you know, still a decent roamer, but not being able to push anywhere near as fast. But I think she'll be able to do a lot more damage to champions with just how often she can now throw her Q abilities, whether it's on worked ground or not, because again, the mana cost on worked ground is only 1, but it's also just going to be much more consistent. This is definitely going to be an interesting change, and I'm going to be really curious to see how this impacts Talia as a champion. But it doesn't stop there just yet, because we also have a quick change to her W, where the cooldown has just been lowered. Her E abilities initial and explosion damage have both been lowered, but then her ultimate's wall duration has been lowered as well. Moving along, we have some buffs coming over to Victor, where his Q ability's damage has just been overall increased by a decent amount, especially by rank 5, extra 40 damage, which which is a lot. Then you have Chaos Storm. The AP ratio on this has been increased by 10%. Pretty solid buffs. I mean, Victor's laning phase is already quite strong, but buffing his Q ability will make it even stronger. Next up, a quick nerf coming over to Xin Zhao, where the AD per level has been lowered from 3.3 to just 3, and Audacious Charge, his E ability, the slow has been decreased to 30%. And the last change coming over is going to be towards Zyra, where the E ability's root duration has been increased ever so slightly. I mean, I don't think this will change a whole lot, and for the most part, it's still going to feel the same. Now let's talk about some changes coming over to items, the first of which being Banner of Command, which did receive a mini rework. The quick description of this is the fact that while no longer will this item just be a straight counter towards mage champions or just AP champions in general. Now, depending on whichever minion you buff, they will get slightly different effects, but for the most part, they'll just obviously be a lot stronger, a lot harder to kill, and it'll be hard to kill for every single champion with an equal amount rather than just being hard to kill for only AP champions. Next up, a quick buff coming over to Runic Echoes, where the AP has been increased from 60 to 80, and it now has a slightly different recipe. But the main part, of course, 80 AP is a lot. I mean, this will definitely make AP junglers a bit more kind of prevalent in the current meta, which for me, as someone that likes to play AD assassins mid, I'm definitely happy about this. Following this, a quick change coming over to Shirelia's Reverie, where the recipe has been changed, the total cost has been slightly increased, and now gives you plus 100% base mana regeneration, but the unique passive movement has been lowered, and the unique active cooldown has been increased. We also have two new runes that I did mention before, one of which being the Ultimate Hunter. Think of the Ultimate Hat just switched out into this form instead, to now, as you get kills and takedowns, you'll actually just increase the cooldown on your ultimate in general. And then we also have Nimbus Cloak, to where after you cast your ultimate ability, you gain a decaying movement speed that lasts for 2.5 seconds and allows you to pass through units as well. Still not entirely sure who is going to want to use Nimbus Cloak other than maybe someone like Master Yi, but other than that, I'm not entirely sure. And last but not least, we also have some new skins coming over to the live servers, I'm assuming this patch, and it's going to be Dark Waters Diana and Dark Waters Vladimir, both of which look extremely sexy in the splash art and also in game. But either way guys, that is going to be it for this video. There you have it, massive changes coming over this patch. Again, probably one of the biggest patches League of Legends has had this season, because not only do we have a new champion, but we have some huge changes coming over to the bot lane, and changes that will also affect other champions as well, to where the meta will definitely shift this coming patch. But either way guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, definitely hit that like button. Thank you all so much for watching, and I hope to see you from my next video. Peace.